on you. What we done started. Look at what we done started. This the people party.
Peace and love, party people. It's Talib Kweli, the host of this fantastic program you're watching right now called The People's Party. I got my homegirl Jasmin Leigh in the place to be. Give it up for Jasmin Leigh in The People's Party. Woohoo! Jasmin.
What's up?
How you feeling?
I never know what to do with my hands on here.
You're supposed to know you're a comedian.
I know.
You're supposed to have that all taken care of.
I gotta set something up.
Well, you know, today, I always say that every episode is going to be fantastic and interesting and wonderful. It's because with the People's Party, I get to interview people that I've known for years often. I get to interview friends of mine that have been successful at their craft and have stuck to the grind and really have a lot of knowledge and gems and jewels and inspiration to spread. And today is no different. Today, we have one of the premier music video directors of a generation. I mean, This guy raised a bunch of directors. You understand what I'm saying? He's a New York City legend. You know him for his videos that he did with 50 Cent. He did like 25 videos with 50 Cent, but he's done videos with all types of people. Now he's really popping in the Latino music scene with the videos. He's done short films. He's done documentaries. He's directed movies, including a classic where I'm from called Soul Plane. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Jessy Terrero.
Yay!
What up, Jessy?
Good, son.
How you feeling?
How's everything with you?
Good to see you, bro.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being a guest on the People's Party.
I'm excited.
I am excited too. I have a lot to talk to you about. You understand? Because your name has come up a couple of times. You know what I'm saying? Met Jasmin before?
What's up, Jasmin?
Hey, Jessy.
How you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good. Can't complain.
What is that in your glass over there?
Just some emergency.
Oh, okay. I
It's
see.
fluorescent juice.
You're supposed to chug it, though.
I know, but I just sip on it. It's just the same.
It's an emergency cocktail.
Yeah. It's, I travel a lot, so honestly, it's actually airborne. But I'm on the plane like every week, so I just, I usually pump a lot of it to try not to get sick.
Yeah, I do the same thing. Doesn't work all the time. I do a lot of emergencies.
I just pop them right when I hear a sneeze. I chug an emergency and I'm cured.
So, Jasmin, I don't know if you know this, but me and Jessy came up in New York around the same time.
That is true.
We used to see each other a lot growing up.
Yeah.
We knew a lot of same people, went to the same parties all the time.
Oh, man.
That's true.
Shout out to your brother and your partner in crime, Yuli.
Yeah. Me and my brother, sometimes we were like the very few Latinos in the spots, And we sort of look alike, so a lot of people always thought we was twins, so we kind of stuck out, and my brother has like big energy.
He does. We used to have a great time.
Yeah. He's like the life of the party.
He always is the life of the party. You and him formed a company together, TNT Casting, right?
Yes.
And that came after y'all got cast in Juice?
Yeah, well, the first, film set we were on was Juice with Tupac. And that sort of came like just us, a bunch of kids in Jamaica, Queens, watching Video Music Box. And
Right. Shout out to Ralph McDaniels.
Exactly. And they had an open casting for Juice. Now, at that point, we didn't know what it was, but we thought there might be a lot of girls there, so we kind of just went to hang out.
Right.
And I met Winsome Sinclair, which was the casting director at the time, and she asked us to come back because in that moment, there weren't a lot of Hispanics that showed up to the casting, and they needed some Hispanic kids, and they had us come back and meet Ernest Dickerson, and he was like, you guys would be perfect. And I remember my brother had like a pimple on his nose, so he threw a Band-Aid over it, and then the director
He
was
looked
like,
rough.
You look mean. He looked rough. He was like, we like that. We're going to go with that look. So
Ernest came from the Spike Lee world, right? He was a
cinematographer
for Spike Lee.
Everybody in the Juice camp came from the Spike Lee world. So
Right.
it was like people that might have been assistants on his movies,
Right.
and this was their first time.
The young, hungry people.
In key positions.
Yeah.
But for me, in college, I wasn't studying film, right? So that was my first year in college. So when I went to the set of Juice, and then, Pac wasn't a huge star yet. So like everybody, Tretch was one of the extras with us as well.
Right. That was that scene where everybody was fighting with Tretch and all that.
Well, we had beef with Tupac. So we were part of the Latin gang where my boy Vincent Laresca played the Rodamez. So, but that was when I was working on the set, I saw a bunch of people that looked like me. So that sort of shifted, my thought and said, wow, I didn't know that working in the film industry could be like a real job and career. And when I went back to college, I shifted my major. I started studying theater and I started studying film.
Now you are Dominican.
Dominican.
Born where?
Born in New York, the Bronx.
Okay.
So we grew up in the Bronx.
Like a lot of Dominicans.
Yeah. You know, a lot of my family, Washington Heights and Corona.
Right.
But when my father came from the Dominican Republic, him and my mother, they stopped in Corona first. Then a lot of the family was in Washington Heights. And then my father got a job as a super of a building in the Bronx, 2 blocks from Yankee Stadium on 161st and Walton Avenue. So that's where we grew up, you know. So that was like, for us, it was mainly like a Puerto Rican neighborhood. And then when I was around 9, 10 years old, you know, my father was a super of the building. He was like the king of the building. But my mom was like not into living in the basement. And she was like pushing to get a house. And my father ended up buying a house in Jamaica, Queens on the block of the Bristol Hotel. Remember LL had that song, the Bristol Hotel? We lived on that block.
Okay.
So, you know, my father saw the house in the daytime. He didn't know that it was like, you know,
we'll go down at night.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then we moved to Queens.
Do you consider yourself, like we had Be Real on the show, and he talked about watching Mellow Man Ace and the people come before him, his OGs, being presented and marketed as Mexican or Latino or Hispanic groups. And he said when we rolled out Cypress Hill, we didn't do it like a Latino group. We just did it like a hip hop group. Do you present yourself, because Spike Lee presents himself as a pro-Black director, do you see yourself as a Latino director or as just a director?
You know, we battle that all the time. You know, I think that I see myself as a Latino director because I want other Latino kids to get inspired and say, you know what, the same way I was on the set of Juice and I saw other people in positions
the representation
of power, they can say, you know, there's a kid in the ghetto somewhere going, you know what, I can do it because Jessy Terrero did it. He's Dominican, he's Latino. It's unfortunate sometimes that we don't get the ability to do certain projects because they look at us as like a Latino director and they don't offer me projects that don't have people of color in them, you know? So, and I'm just like, my camera is not Latino, you know? I'm using the same camera everybody is using, got the same education. Right. Well, all of a sudden, when I used to walk into my agency, they would be like, these are the 100 movies happening in Hollywood, and these are the 5 that are going to go to somebody that looks like you. And it's unfortunate, but that's the facts.
Right.
They're not going to give you, you're not going to be in competition with all the white directors on movies with white stars.
Right.
But a movie that pops up with a Black star or a Hispanic star, you got a shot.
So you might, the inclination is, of course, to do it independently, but then you need the funding for that, right? Which and not just the funding, but the avenues to market and promote and everything that they give you access to. Right?
And look, I think that there was when Spike was coming, there was a moment to like be heard. So like he couldn't just be a director because there weren't any Black directors. So he had to be a Black director and had to be the voice of a whole culture, you know? Right. So now I know that, you know, there's a lot of people that used to feel a certain way 10, 15 years ago. Right. But now people are more empowered. You know, that doesn't bother people as much because we have powerful Black showrunners, powerful Black talent, writers. And on the Hispanic side, you know, there's a lot of Mexican directors that have been winning the Oscars every year, right? So, the Latinos are representing, you know, even though our culture is a little fragmented. So sometimes it's not the same.
Right. All of our cultures is fragmented. So you got your start in music videos. Yeah. And the story goes that you wrote a concept video for a group in Canada, and the directors in Canada, the people you was working with, they couldn't bring your vision to fruition. Yeah. So what happened was when after we worked on Juice, my third year in college, I had shot a short film, and I was like studying theater, thought I was going to be an actor first, and then like Ron Howard turned into a director after my acting career. And then you know, a stint of playing like, you know, Drug Dealer 1, Rapist 2, you know. And you was on like Law and Order. And and a bunch of stuff like that. And it was always a similar thing, right? And then you get there and they wanted like, you know, Scarface was so popular, they wanted the Scarface accent. And I was like, yo, I don't talk like that. Right, like, I'm not Cuban. And I was like, he's not Hispanic. Right, so even that he's Italian. Exactly. It's a little bit like, I'm not sure if I know a lot of people that sound like that. Right, you just got to do an Al Pacino impersonation. Exactly. So at some point, you know, me and my brother got offered an internship on a film called I Like It Like That. So we started working on that internship. With Darnell Martin. So I worked with the producers on learning how to put a movie together, and with Ann Carly and this guy named Victor De Jesus, and my brother worked in casting. Right. So when he started working in casting, he saw that there was like, at that time, there weren't a lot of African Americans in the Screen Actors Guild. There wasn't barely any Hispanics. So that's what kind of led him to start a company to try to open the doors for a lot of kids that were trying to do their thing. And for me, you know,
the music videos thing started to happen. So both me and my brother shifted into music videos right after. And that was partially because the Juice Tretch started, Naughty by Nature started becoming popular. We started going on sets with a lot of the talent we were meeting, and the hip hop was growing. I found out that a lot of directors didn't write their own concepts.
Right.
So I started writing concepts. So the first concept I wrote was Money, Power, Respect.
Okay.
Exactly. Right. And then I started, the production company started saying, oh, this kid has cool ideas. So I started writing a bunch of ideas. And that led to this group in Canada called Ghetto Concept reaching out to me and say, hey, can you write us a concept? So I wrote an idea, sent it to them.
Ghetto Concept said, we need a concept. Yeah. We don't got any concepts.
And this, exactly. And this was at a time where, Toronto wasn't where it's at now musically.
Right.
And there was a lot of young black artists going, emulating what was happening with like Mobb Deep or Wu-Tang and things like that. And they weren't ready for that. So they wanted a concept that was very like Wu-Tang-esque. So I wrote an idea that was like that, and nobody got it because it felt like too rebellious for the streets of Canada. So they were like, Jesse, you should come up and direct it. And that ended up being my first music video, and it got nominated at Much Music for Rap Video of the Year. Shot it for $10,000 and, changed my life.
Rest is history. Your first big video that hit big in the States was with Jill Scott?
Yeah.
Okay, which song was that?
Getting in the Way.
Getting in the Way.
That is one of my favorite songs.
So what was interesting about that is that, I was working with one director at the time, Diane Martell. And I would say Diane was the one that
Shout out to Diane Martell.
Yeah. She was one of the best ever did it.
Yeah, she was a powerhouse.
Incredible. So female director. And, I learned a lot from Diane. And then as I was writing treatments in her camp, I was approached by these reps, Robin Frank and Jelena Stewart, and they had a young director coming out of Baltimore named Chris Robinson. And they was like, yo, we got this director, Chris Robinson. We would love to put you on his writing team. And then Chris and me never wrote separately. So we would sit in the room. I would fly wherever he was at, and we would knock out a bunch of treatments creatively. So we became really good
So it's like a
friends.
factory at this point.
Yeah, because Chris might have been doing 2 videos a month, and now we're doing 6 because we're like cranking out these jobs. So whether it was Big Pun, this, that, we were just sitting in the room and coming up with ideas. And at some point, Chris was like, man, I want to sign you to my company as a director. So I signed to Chris Robinson, started a company called Robot, and the first job he brought me was Jill Scott. So they weren't sure what the single was going to be, so I did Getting in the Way and Long Walk at the same time. We shot them back to back. And then they chose to release them the way they did. So at that moment, I felt like there was a lot of directors jumping into the game. So I was like, this is a big opportunity for me. So I wanted to do something that felt different.
Right.
So both the concepts were very different for that time. And, that was the first big video I did, and we got an MTV nomination. And that changed the game for me too.
Now, you are from the same area as 50.
Yeah.
Is that how y'all linked up? Being from the same
You know what, sort of. And it's not how we linked up, but it's how I knew who he was.
Right. You knew what was going on with 50 Cent before the industry did.
Yeah, because, growing up in that neighborhood, I used to see LL Cool J walk through the Coliseum with no shirt on. I'm like, who the fuck is this dude with the fucking chain on? Right. And then, Onyx were barbers in my neighborhood, right? So we met Onyx.
They had the wild dreads.
Sticky did.
Yeah.
But I met them through Shot Skills, because like we used to play football against other neighborhoods, and we played with him, and then he introduced us to Onyx. Then Irv used to be with Mike Geronimo, and we used to see so everybody was kind of like running in the similar circles, Right. And then we were in a scenario where 50's first songs was with Onyx. Right, when they did that video, that Little X did.
Jam Master Jay was the connection.
When they were all signed to JMJ. So I was tracking 50 the whole time because he was doing songs in our neighborhood. And then, all the stuff happened when he got shot and all this stuff. And then when he reemerged, I was already doing videos. So I was doing a lot of videos with Interscope. So I was doing like Styles P or one of these records.
Good times.
And I found out that M signed him. So I called DJ at Interscope and I was like, yo, I want to do 50. He's from my neighborhood. I want to do that project. And they was like, oh, that project's not up for a while. But I was like, I want to do it. And Wankster was already out.
So you've seen it.
Wankster was like a mixtape record. It was already out. It was buzzing. So then, I got the opportunity. And at that time, I've already had graduated to do bigger videos, budgetarily. Right. But I wanted to do 50. So, and a lot of the bigger directors weren't chasing it because the budget was low.
Right.
So I was like, I'm jumping on this because I believe in it from my neighborhood. And the rest is history. We created a good chemistry and we just started rocking from that point.
Yeah, 50 videos, G-Unit videos, the whole family. You became part of the family, essentially.
Trust me, to the point where I used to go to clubs and people used to run up on me like, yo,
Yeah.
you G-Unit? And I was like, You know, people ain't running up on Dave Myers because he working with Jay-Z. You know
what is it?
I was like, yeah. You know, it's hard because they asking you want to say, yeah, I guess I am G-Unit because we doing so much work. But, you know, me and 50 built a great relationship, you know.
What is it about that part of the world that make people hustle so hard? I mean, besides it being hood, because it's hoods all over the world, you know, but there's a lot of superstars that come from that area.
You know, I think that in New York, just in general, we're like on top of each other. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like, you know, I've been living in LA for a long time. Everything's spread out. I don't even see people in my neighborhood if I don't want to. You know what I'm saying? In New York, you can't avoid it. You know what I mean? It don't matter what level of class you are financially. You're going to ride the train. You're going to walk down the street. You're going to have to interact and bump into people. So the competition's right on top of you. You know what I'm saying? So you got to fight harder. You know what I mean? It's like when you come out, when you're acting or in the film business in New York, it's like 10 things going on. In LA, there's 2,000. So people are more laid back here. Like there's not that much opportunity. You got to fight for it. So it creates a level of ambition and hunger that, you know, creates like these type of, you know, and you can even see it in music. Like, you know, people will argue, but the rappers in New York were always stronger because they were battling and it was like in your face and you had to be incredible to pop out of there, you know?
Working with music videos, you know, there's always a criticism about you guys objectifying women.
Objectifying women?
Listen,
is this the first time you've heard
that? Ever? I know, it's a shocker. What do you think about that, though?
What's up?
Is that's your thoughts on it?
You know, I think that you know, they came at me one time when I did this video for Chingy right there, right?
Oh. And
they were like, yo, and this, that, and I was at the University of Chicago having a conversation, and it was
speaking
like,
to woke college students.
What's up? Yeah. And it was like, you know, 100 Erykah Badu's and Jill Scott's. Like, they were not giving me a break, you know? So I'm like, damn, at that point, I was working with the Roots, Music Soul Child, Jill Scott, Angie Stone, and you're going to argue about this one video that I did for Chingy, which that's what he wanted. And I was like, I didn't teach those girls how to do that shit. like that wasn't for me.
Like, this is how you, right there.
I mean, it just happens a lot in videos. And you say that, you know, girls do it on Instagram, but it's definitely different if you're doing it on your own page than if it's like, you know.
Nah, you know what? But you can't say that because, like, what I'm saying is, like, when you were dealing with hip hop at a certain era and you were coming up, girls had the choice sometimes. They wore their own outfits, right? So some of these girls, that's how they wanted to be seen. That's what they thought was fly. And this is a conversation I always have with people. I was like, you know, when you look at rock videos, right? And you look at rock videos in the beginning, when we were growing up, they weren't hip hop videos. So you were watching rock videos. And these rock videos had tons of girls in bikinis, right? So you have these young black kids growing up in the ghetto looking at that going, you know what, that is what success is about, right? So when you watch like some rock kids that grow up with money, and you watch their videos, they're in the garage. They're like doing everything to run away from what they came from. You know what I'm saying? And you see a young African-American kid, a black kid in the hood, he's putting all his money on his neck and everything because he's like, you know what? He don't got shit. So he's trying to show you everything he got. And in his mind, that was success, was having all these women, you know? And I think the biggest argument was never about the women because if you see a girl in the Vogue magazine, if you see a girl in the Victoria's Secret ad wearing the same thing, for some reason in your mind, you're going, that's classy. But that girl from the ghetto that nobody taught how to walk down the runway, she thinks she looks just like the girl in the Victoria's Secret campaign. It's just she don't got, you know what I mean? She doesn't have the rehearsals or the time. And, you know, so it's like we were trying to do that to what the artist like.
You're trying to show the beauty.
Yeah, because if you saw in that era, if you did a video for Usher, let's say, and Usher made choices to pick like models that came from an agency, that was his preference in girl. Right, and then if you did a video for, let's say, Little John and the Yin Yang Twins, they didn't want those skinny girls. Right. So you know, it's hard. It's a tough.
I mean, I can get what you're saying with that, whatever, because it is a society thing that has put into your heads that this is beautiful when it's slimmer and this is not because she's thicker or whatever. But you know, just standing there walking down a runway is definitely different than like, you know.
No, I know, but what I'm trying to say is that when you do a video and the girls are like popping their butts and stuff, we're not telling them to do that.
They're just okay.
They decide to do that on their own. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm saying, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, and I'm a father of 2 daughters, right? You know, but you know, the world shifted a little bit too. So back in the days, they felt like when you see like Tip Drill, some crazy video, they feel like, okay, these girls' butts are so big, this is like crazy. It's like, I can't look at it. And then if you look at what's happening now in social media and culture, these girls are getting these butt implants.
You know about
This is true.
Hottentot story? Where there's a woman, I believe she was from South Africa, but she was taken to Europe and paraded around because she had this big ass, this African ass. And they looked at it like it was like she was a circus freak. But like that to me is the first version of that. Do you feel like as a director, what responsibility do you feel like as an artist and as a director who's working on behalf of somebody to inject your own morals into a video? Or do you feel any responsibility to do that?
You know what? I think the older you get, you know, your mind shifts, you know?
Right.
And I was having this conversation with some young directors and I was saying, hey, I'm trying to build some projects and there's opportunities in the world. And I'm like, you're 25 years old. You're working with these kids. Like, you should be the one that does the movie that's the menace to society, that shows this culture. Because I'm going to overthink it at this age. You know, and you're going to give it unapologetic. Like, you're going to do something that feels so right to you because you feel like that's how you're living. I'm going to see it as like a father now, or with this heavy responsibility that I got to make a change.
Different eyes.
Because what I was trying to do is, like, before I did the video with Chingy, I'd never been to St. Louis. So I said, you know what? I want to go to the clubs. I want to see what St. Louis is about. And I was trying to document a feeling that was going to resonate to people there, that was going to feel authentic. So when you watch the video, I was trying to capture what was happening because that's what it felt like to me, you know? And hip hop was about authenticity. You know what I'm trying to say? At that time. Now it's about many different things. But at that time, it was about being authentic to where you came from.
Regional too.
An original. If you wasn't popping in your neighborhood in St. Louis, nobody cared. Like, you know, if I'm like, yo, this rapper's from St. Louis, it's like, is he popping in St. Louis? Because if he ain't popping in his hometown, I don't care. So it was different. And that's what we thought we were doing. You know, it was like we were doing that. And the artists kind of dictated sometimes the journey. You know, every artist wasn't ready to be outcast or be different talent that say, you know what, let's push the envelope. Missy was like, let's do something different, right? Everybody wasn't giving you that kind of brief.
Tell us about acting on The Sopranos. Because you got to do that when you was in your actor phase. I don't know if you're done with your actor phase.
I don't know. You know what, for me, it's like a boxer. Like, you know, if you didn't train for a long time, you can't just jump in the ring. Because I respect the craft. So at some point, if I feel like I want to go down that road, I got to like get myself back into that world. So that I'm a good actor. That episode you were on dealt with like reparations though. You know what happened with Sopranos was that throughout the years, I would bounce from working production to work with my brother in casting. And my brother was working on the project with Christopher Walken's wife, Georgianne Walken and Sheila Jaffe, which are big casting directors, right? So at one point, something happened to one of their assistants and they left. And they were like, you know what, Jesse? There's an opportunity if you want to come work with us. Now, I was studying acting, right? And they gave me an opportunity where I could be their assistant and read with other actors. Now, when you're working with Christopher Walken's wife, you're reading with big actors, big talent. So I felt like that was a great platform for me to like practice my craft and get a paycheck. So I was working with them through these projects and they would get these projects like Sopranos. And I was like, I love the Sopranos. But there was never a Spanish kind of Sopranos. So I was like, the day there's somebody, let me know because I want to be on the show. And they called me to do that thing. So it's not like I knew what the episode was about. What it was. I just showed up, got shot real quick.
That's how it always happens.
Showed up, got shot real quick.
I was just excited to be on TV.
No doubt.
That's awesome.
You're one of the few people on this planet that has had a chance to direct the legendary Robert De Niro in the Freelancer film.
Extremely fortunate. I feel extremely fortunate.
Talk to us about that.
You know, it was when we started that project, it wasn't supposed to be De Niro. It was going to be another actor. You know, 50 had called me. And you know,
that was like his project, right?
I did a video called, a video Many Men with 50.
That's a great video.
So when we did that video, for me, it was like a representation of like his life, right? And 50 said I could do whatever I wanted at the time, and we were just gonna do something gritty. And you know, he had in the club 21 Questions. He was going so pop that M felt like we needed to go back to the roots and do something hard. So they gave me the ability to just craft whatever I wanted. And we did something that ultimately became like the trailer to Get Rich or Die Trying. And people were like, press the button, like, this is what the movie's gonna feel like. unfortunately, the studio didn't see any directors of color, you know, and what they wanted to do, according to how they presented it to us, was be like opposite of hip hop, right? So the way they had a Curtis Hanson do 8 Mile, they wanted somebody else, so they got a Jim Sheridan who did My Left Foot. Right. So they went the opposite. Instead of going with F. Gary Gray or Singleton, and you know, I thought I was working so much with 50 was going to be my jump in the game. So 50 called me one time and was like, look, man, I got a plan to make some movies, you know, and Hollywood ain't giving us opportunities. We're going to take it. I'm going to raise the money ourselves. We're going to go out and make some movies. Okay. He was like, I want to do a movie for $2 million. We're going to flip it, sell it for $5 million. We're going to shoot it in 2 weeks, blah, blah, blah. He gave me the whole plan. So I was like, all right, cool. When do we shoot? He was like, between Christmas and New Year's, where everybody's on vacation, we're going to go make this money. Right. And I was like, all right, cool. And he was like, in Michigan. I'm like, it's going to be freezing in Michigan. Right. And then I was like, it's October. Like, you want to do a movie in December? You haven't even sent me the script. He was like, don't worry about it, Jess. You'll fix it up. It's good, blah, blah. He was like, but I got Val Kilmer and I got a small window. Like, we can do something. And when we flip the movie, I'm going to flip it again. Then we're going to do 4 movies for 20. Then I'm going to raise 100. Right. So I was like, all right, cool. I said, you know what? I trust his ambition and his vision. So I said, you know what? Let's go to Grand Rapids. You know what I mean? We all stayed in the same shitty hotel. It wasn't like he was in the penthouse suite and I was somewhere bad. We were all in the same bad room in the same hotel.
It's like putting on the white t-shirt and getting out on that block.
And we went and we did the movie. I shot it in 15 days and he flipped it and he sold it. But instead of raising the 20, he raised 100 right away. Wow. And then he was like, you know what? Now the movies are going to get bigger. He was like, come with me to the Golden Globes and we're going to look for talent to put in this next movie. So we went to the Golden Globes and we was trying to find talent. We ended up getting the one guy that we thought we were going to get. But through some politics or whatever, it fell through and the movie started pushing. And when it pushed, this window opened up where Robert De Niro became available. So they were like, you got to go meet him in New York. So I was like, shit. And it was like, you got to sell him. So I'm like, I got to sell Robert De Niro?
Right. So this was your job.
Wow.
So I'm like, man. So like I flew to New York. I didn't tell anybody I was there but my brother Yuli. And I was like, yo, come meet me at this hotel. Right. And I'm sitting there. I'm like, yo, I got to meet Robert De Niro. And I'm on hold. Like, I don't know if I'm going to meet him at 2 o'clock or 7 o'clock. You know the pressure and stress I got to live with it? And I was like, yo, come with me to J. Crew because I don't know what I'm supposed to wear. Right. Like, I know, like, if I wear a suit, he's going to be like, yo, I'm fronting. Right. So I might maybe put a blaze on, some cool sneakers. I got to let him know I'm urban.
So you thinking the whole...
Yeah, because your presentation, how he's going to see me when I walk through that door.
Package deal.
And you know what? When I walked through that door, he was super cool, you know. And the one thing, you know, I'm not going to say it's about this, but, you know, De Niro's, all his wives were African-American. Yes. So his kids sort of look like me. And I felt like, you know what? He embraced that. He knows that it's a hard road for us. Right. And I felt like he spoke to me, filmmaker to filmmaker. And he's a director as well. So we talked. I told him about some of how I saw the movie. And he was like, you know what? I'll give you an answer in like the next like 48 hours. And then he signed on to do the movie. And he would call me all the time and talk to me about character. He would call me so much, break down the character and send me like newspaper clippings on like how he sees them and like the research he's doing to like, you know, think about what this man thought about. And he emulated off people that really existed. And he let me know that I wasn't at that level. I was like, wow, like as much research as I was doing to prepare for the movie, I wasn't at the De Niro level. Right. Like, I was like, wow, I got to get my game together, you know? And I'm about to meet Forrest Whitaker, and I'm like... Yeah,
and it's the same thing with him, right?
Yeah. Forrest is a different animal because, you know, Forrest, I wasn't getting the opportunity to speak to him as much. And, you know, the first time I spoke to Forrest was interesting because I was like, hey, you know, and at that point, I was already cool and I could call him Bob. So I was like, yeah, me and Bob were talking. Right. So I was like, you guys know each other, right? And he was like, no. Right. I was like, you don't know Robert De Niro? He goes, yeah, we cross each other at the Oscars and stuff like that. But I don't know. I've never really met him like that. And I was like, wow, the day you're coming in, we're sending him back to New York on a private plane. You should come back with him. I'm going to call him and tell him for you guys to ride so y'all can meet. And then I hooked them up. So they rode back together and they met on the plane. And it was cool, you know. So, but you know, it's interesting how these guys who are major stars like that never really cross paths. You know, but it was tough. It was tough because like the pressure. What are you going to tell Robert De Niro?
Right. You're like young Padawan at that shit.
You were thrown out to swim and you swam to safety.
You know, but somebody, you know what? I met with somebody in his company and said, you know what? He's a real person. He's a real artist and he's a real guy. Right. If you talk to him like that, he's going to respect you, show you love. He respects the art. He's never going to step over the director. Right. But if you come in there like you're the best director of all time, like you're going to put him in the best role of all time, he's already done that. Right. So it's like, you got to just come in at the position you're in and he'll respect that and respect you. So we got along great and he was like super dope.
That's beautiful, man.
Yeah,
to come from where you come from, to just do that.
Oh, man, it was amazing. Sometimes I would get off the chair and then I would sit back down and he was like, Jessy, come over here. What'd you want to say?
Right, because
I was like, you know what? You know, because actors don't like when you line read them, when you like explain to them how they should act. But they, you know, they want you to explain and tell them the emotion and what you're trying to get out of it. But I couldn't explain it. So I was just like, you know what? I don't want to line read you, but I would have maybe hit the cigarette, created a little moment between you and him so he could get tense, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, I like that. I'll try that. And I was like, all right, cool. One for the Dominican.
Word up. Word up. How did you you're the director of Soul Plane.
Yes.
How did you come about that opportunity?
You know, the short film that I did that was at Sundance was a comedy, you know, that I shot in Jamaica, Queens. So, you know, just culturally, you know, I think we just like to laugh and be funny and do, and, you know, and that is just part of who we are. So I was always a fan of comedies and I was going down that road. And then I was playing with an idea that was Trading Places meets Airplane. Oh. So I called my agent and I was like, yo, the airlines are going out of business. And these two guys, you know, that own the airlines look out and they see like a young black kid like stealing some shit. Like there's like a baggage handler and they make a bet. Like, let's take this guy, blah, blah, blah. So I pitched it to my agents.
Okay.
And they were like, oh, you know, I worked more on the idea. I pitched it to them and they were like, there's a project similar at MGM. And then they send me Soul Plane. And it was like, you know what? And at first I was like, I don't like the title though. Like, it really bothers me. Why does got to be the Soul Plane? Why couldn't it just have a normal title? And they were like, we don't know if you're going to be able to change it. But so I read the script and there was a lot of things that I thought were funny. So they were like, we'll set you up for a meeting because that project's going to go. If that project goes, your project probably won't go. Right. Because they're too similar. Right. So I went in, met on the movie, and then they hired me to do it.
That movie is considered widely hailed as a cult classic and as a comedy classic, and it started a lot of careers. But it was also panned by critics when it came out. Yeah. And not just by critics, but a lot of people in the culture felt like that movie represented some stereotypes. Yeah. Now, not necessarily the actors in the movie or the people who participated in it, but that was the cultural critique. Mm-hmm. How did you receive that? How did that feel when it was going on?
Oh, it hurt a lot. You know, they got me like coaches to deal with it.
Oh, shit.
You know what I'm saying? Because they would ask me stuff like they would practice in the studio before we started doing press.
Okay.
So Jessy, so how does it feel? Like we love the movie's so funny, and they would throw out a bunch of stuff, and then like the fifth question would be like, but how do you feel about setting the black culture back? Mm-hmm. I'm like, fuck you, you know. And then they were like, no, breathe, you know. So you know, for me, we didn't think we were doing anything wrong, you know. I mean, there was a bunch of stuff. Now, you got to understand, right? It was one of Kevin Hart's first projects, right? So Kev was like a young comedian. Right. Then you had Monique, you had some more. You had all these other comedians that have been in the game a long time that if you took any of their stand-up and you put it on screen, you would have got the same backlash.
Right.
Right? So it was hard to do our urban comedy on screen because it's like, it's always an exaggeration. Mm-hmm. You know, and so to me, it's like in that era, that was the era of like urban comedy, and there was a bunch of comedies that were feeding and building a lot of like the young black comedians. And I would ask people, and I would say, hey man, if you feel like this joke doesn't work for you or doesn't, then don't do it. And you know, and Monique a lot of times would do stuff that I'll be scared of, like, no, we're not doing that. And she was like, stop being a pussy, it's comedy, you know. But you know, we were young and you know, it was like hip hop culture, like, you know what I'm saying? It was all built on stuff. It was built on like funny urban stereotypes, but that's what comedy usually sometimes plays into.
Right.
You know, so I was hurt because I felt like in Hollywood, the movie became a cult classic, but it was bootlegged like 5 months before.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
So that destroyed our box office. Okay. Now, I was the first person that found the movie.
Oh, wow.
Right. So the whole investigation and everything that happened around the movie was because of me, because some of my friends called me like, yo, we're on Crenshaw and Slauson. And people got your movie here.
Right.
Wow.
So there was how do you want to handle it? And I was like, you know, they said a lot of things. And I'm like, yo, we don't live like that no more.
Right.
But I was like, I'm going to go get my movie.
Right.
So I was like, I got and went to Crenshaw and Slauson. And I was like watching the dudes and I'm like, what do I do now? And then I was like trying to think it through. And then some dude knocked on my window and was like, yo, dog, he said, what up, cuz? We got those mixtapes, boy. We got that Woo Kid. We got that this. We got that. And come on, we got that Passion of the Christ. We got that Soul Plane. And I was like, whoa, we didn't even have a poster.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They had a poster. I'm like, these dudes are. I was like, fucking way ahead. Wow. But there were only 5 versions of the movie, and I had embedded everybody's name into it. So like the RZA had a copy. I had a copy, because the RZA did the score. So so I'm like, whose version is it? So I need to buy this movie. It was the hardest thing I ever did was buy my own movie. But what was I going to do? It's my movie. And I would have got less beat up on Crenshaw and Slauson.
Whose version was it?
Purchased it.
Yeah, I was wondering the same.
It was the studio's version. So basically what happened was I screened the movie for the president of the studio. And it's hard to screen a black comedy for a white man by yourselves. You know what I'm saying? And at like 10 in the morning.
Right.
So he just watched the movie, didn't laugh one time.
Wow.
That's like the longest hour and a half of my life.
Wow.
And then he was like, I don't understand the movie. What we're going to do for you is Monday, we're going to do a screening in the urban neighborhood. We're going to put some urban kids and see how they respond to it. And then we'll talk about what we do next. So he was like, Jesse, you got to change some stuff because there was some effects that I left the time code at the bottom. And I was like, yeah, but the effects don't look great. And I want people to know that's a work in progress. And he was like, yeah, but we don't screen movies like that. You got to take the time code off. So that movie he sent to Technicolor that weekend for them to take the time code off and make it presentable to screen. And that was the version that was on the street. So somebody in Technicolor.
In that exchange.
Yeah, which sucks because what ended up happening is they just went there, arrested everybody at Technicolor because it was on the weekend. So it was a weekend crew, which was a small staff. And they were like, who did it? And everybody was like, that guy did it.
Right.
Man. And he got like a couple of $1,000 or whatever he got. I'm like, man, I would have gave you twice as much money not to sell my movie.
Right. How long are you in jail for bootlegging?
It was one of the biggest sentences they gave him was a 1 year.
Damn.
And I told the studio, I said, let's release the movie now. And they didn't want to release it early. So it sat out there. I said, when you have a movie that has Snoop Dogg and a bunch of urban people on the cover, people don't think it's coming to the movies. When they see that on Jamaica Ave,
they think it's out.
They think it's out. They think that's what it is.
But I mean, maybe it was supposed to happen like that, because it was like it was supposed to get to the people. Maybe, I don't know,
it put me in like, for me in my career, put me in director's jail, we call it. I felt like everybody that was like 90% of Black Hollywood turned their back. Because it was like when you already had like Spike and a bunch of people saying negative things about it, and then it didn't perform, everybody was like, boop, boop, boop. They just closed the doors. So I was like, wow, just like that. I just got cut out the game.
Right.
So I was like, I had nothing to do. What was I supposed to do? I wasn't going to get any other jobs now. I was looked upon like I made a terrible movie. I would walk in the ghettos and people were loving me.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know what to do. So I called 50 and I was like, yo, I got to get back in the game. He goes, yo, I got 600,000. Let's go to Miami and do some videos. I said, let's go. And I started going back at the G Unit, back in the music video game. And I started hitting that hard again. Say, you know what? I'm rebuild back in pop culture.
Right.
And then, try this again on my own terms.
But you also made a conscious decision at that time to start working with more Latino artists as well, right? Yeah,
what happened was, Interscope, this kid 3H at Interscope.
Shout out to 3H.
Yeah.
His name is coming up a couple times too.
Yeah. So 3H signed Daddy Yankee. So when 3H signed Daddy Yankee, it was the first time an American label signed a Latin artist.
Right.
And then 3H was like, yo, Jesse's Dominican. He told Yankee, so I wasn't interacting with a lot of these guys. So then he put me on the phone with Yankee. So me and Yankee spoke, and then I did Rompe and Gangsta Zone with Yankee, which were his big American releases.
Right.
Then Vin Diesel had a Spanish record on Fast and Furious. So he called me to do a video with Don Omar.
Right.
So at that point, like, it's like the cat got out the bag and everybody's like, yo, this kid that's doing all these videos for G Unit and 50 is Dominican. Right. So I started like the Looney Tunes, different producers started calling me like, yo, I need to hook up. I'm Dominican too. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I did a favor for the Looney Tunes. And in that video, I met Weezy and Yandel. So at that point, everybody knew what the Looney Tunes spent. So they were like, everybody was coming at me with that number. And I'm like, that's not my price. That was like a favor I did for the Looney Tunes. Right. But I saw the market growing, you know, and you know, I come from New York, so the Spanish music was always there.
Right, and the music was there. Bigger and bigger and bigger.
So I was like, you know what? I started seeing like the growth, right? And that was at a time when music videos on the hip hop side started to decline.
Right.
So the budget started to decline, but they started to rise here. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to ingratiate myself in this market because what was happening is Me TRL came out and they did the Spanish TRL. So now they were going Aventura, In Sync, Destiny's Child, Wisin y Yandel. Like these videos were coming out, and I never knew how bad the Latin videos felt until they were in comparison to the American videos. So I was complaining one day, and one of my boys was like, "You got two options here. You can continue to complain, or you can be part of the change. But you got to make that decision." So I was like, "Fuck, I'm about to lose a lot of money." Because like, you know, the budgets were so low. But I decided to ingratiate myself in that market and say, you know what, I want to be the part of the visual change. You know what I'm saying? And I want to raise the visuals. If I could do it in the general market, why shouldn't I do it for my own people? So I just went at it. And then I started working with Wisin y Yandel. I did a bunch of videos with Yankee. Started working with Wisin y Yandel. And and budgetarily, they weren't there yet either, but they were growing. So I said, you know what? In order for me to create impact, the way I created impact with G-Unit, I need to do a bunch of videos. I need to build a vision. So they were like, you could do every video. And then we did 17 as those kids were becoming the biggest stars in the world. And we just shifted the culture like that. And then you know, it's like you create something that everybody else follows. Now the Latin artists are looking at the labels going, yo, we don't want these shitty videos. We want to look better. We want to feel better. Like, you know, and it started to change. Now the heads of the labels disliked me for a long time, because the artists wanted more. But they deserve more.
Absolutely. Word is bond. We're seeing a renaissance. Well, not a renaissance, but, you know, we're seeing something new happen in the Latin market. And you're a part of it. You know, you're directing this documentary with Maluma, right? What do you think it is that's making that type of music go so mainstream and competing on that level with the J Balvins and the Bad Bunnies and all that? Like it's a big thing.
I think for me, you know, I sold a channel to Google a couple of years ago called Uno Dos Tres that they financed, which is about bilingual Latinos in America, and I was doing a bunch of content. And I was at a company that had owned my channel, owned Jay-Z's channel, The Life and Times, on another channel with Skrillex, and we used to have conversations about music. And they always talked about like the Latin artists, like on the lower end of the spectrum. Right. And you know, now granted, I'm a hip hop fan, so if Rick Ross is out and people are like banging, the songs are like, you know, that's what it is. And even the Latin artists are looking at that like that's the American dream. But from a streaming standpoint, his videos might have been doing 300 million. And Don Omar and them were doing 800, 500 million. So I'm just like, if we're in the business of views, then why am I being talked to? Why my budgets are low? You know what I'm saying? Because so they were like, yeah, you know, reggaeton, we feel it was a passing fad. It was over. And I was like, nobody ever told Daddy Yankee that. That boy never stopped. There's been two moments in time that felt the same. When Gasolina dropped and when Despacito, and the same guy sitting in the same chair. So nobody told him. So for me, culturally, the music's been gigantic. When we put 50 and Wisin y Yandel together, 50 went on tour for the first time in Latin America. Sold 14 million records, never toured Latin America. You know, we were doing shows with Wisin y Yandel, Daddy Yankee, Aerosmith, shit like that, arenas, right? And it was like 50's first foray into Latin America. So for me, I was like, the music was always big. The only thing that changed was how people consumed music. So now, people were consuming on computers, right? In the average urban household, there's not many computers. There might be one computer to share. But when the smartphones came out, and you know, the Latinos over-index on phones. You know, so in all those Latin countries.
Same thing in Africa too. That's where
people
you get
are consuming
the Afrobeat from, the same thing.
So now with the Spotifys and the YouTubes and all these streaming services coming out, now there's data. Before it was a guy like me going, yo, these guys are big. They're selling out arenas all over the world. You know, Aventura came to LA, did 4 Staples Centers. We seen that we're doing 3 Staples Centers. The American artists weren't doing that. They were in there by themselves. But it was like you had to tell people, maybe AEG, a couple of people, Live Nation were tracking them. But I was like, but now the streaming service are going, you know what? The top 10 videos of last year, 7 were reggaeton. And it's like, you can't avoid it anymore. But for me, they've been big for 10 years. But now it's like the mainstream is like, now you can't stop it now because it's
No doubt.
a global thing
No
now,
doubt.
you know? But I'm excited. I'm excited to see the, you know, people capitalizing on it.
It's exciting times, Jessy.
It's exciting times, man.
And I'm glad that you're a part of it, man.
Oh, I'm glad,
you bring a
you know,
certain authenticity to it.
Yeah, you know what, you know, yes, you know.
Yeah, own it, bro.
Yeah, you know, it's one of the things that I, you know, that I'm very passionate about, you know, and you know how it is, you know,
Yeah.
and even with hip hop, and for me, I felt like some of the stuff I was doing reggaeton was I was reliving my life again,
Right.
because I did those things in hip hop, and I saw how the culture moved in hip hop, and I saw the success of a lot of people around me in hip hop, and I felt like if I can take a little bit of that and add it to the Hispanic market, we can create the same things. And even now to this day, it's the biggest music globally. And there's no content that goes against it. There's not a movie. It's not a TV show.
That's right.
It's still lacking so much, and there's still so much room to grow. So, you know, it's why I started my company, Cinema Giants, because at the time, I wasn't supported by other companies when I wanted to do these reggaeton videos.
Right.
So I was like, you know what? I got to build my own company, do my own thing, because I'm like, you know, nobody's going to see the dream but me.
Cinema Giants. There's a cinema giant right here, Jessy Terrero.
Yeah.
Give it up for Jessy Terrero on the People's Party. I love it.